Energy measurements is a hot topic these days, mainly driven by the regulatory requirements. And one of the challenges when it comes to energy measurements is that the energy information is available in a very heterogeneous environment. There's a lot of different devices out there where you need to collect energy information. Sometimes you can get the actual energy measurements from a device. Sometimes you need to derive it based on other data that you have, either single measurements or combining several measurements that you have and do some calculations to arrive at some kind of energy estimation or measurement. And eventually you want to collect all of this information from potentially a wide spread out setup of data points, physically spread out. I mean, with that, might be across a large site or across multiple sites, but in the end, you want to have a somewhat holistic view of a relevant part of your operations to be able to optimize and find out, first of all, what your energy consumption is, but more importantly, how you can optimize it and reduce it to save costs and other things. So what we typically see is a combination of different types of flows, where you first have flows to collect the data and produce useful data out of that information. And then you could create some templates or standard flows for different types of devices. So that's the first two examples here, but you could have any number of these, of course, depending on the variety of devices that you need to connect. But the output of each of these will be energy measurements in a standardized format. And here as an example, we publish those results on an MQTT broker. And then the final flow is used to aggregate these measurements from a number of these underlying flows and collect them and then send them to a centralized monitoring system, wherever that might be hosted. Could be in your own data center or using a cloud service and so forth. All of this could run on one crosser node, but what we typically see is that you end up having multiple crosser nodes, both for collecting data with the first two type of flows, and then maybe a more centralized node for running the aggregation and collection of these underlying flows that produces data. So you can build a hierarchy of crosser nodes that sends data between each other, and then in the end produces one aggregated view over a larger entity of an operation, which is then sent into a centralized cloud service. So this is one way of doing it, but the key thing here is that energy measurements is a pretty common use case, and with the crosser tools you have full flexibility in collecting and providing useful information for these type of use cases.